Dan, what's happening, man? You good?
Yeah, I'm good, man. You?
I'm good, thank you. Well, thanks for asking. Hardly anyone ever does, so I appreciate that.
Gotta be polite.
You gotta be polite. So thanks for doing this. Welcome to Too Much Information. Appreciated.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure.
Good. So I just wanted to got to let you know, reason I wanted to speak to you, we've worked together in the past. You're good people. We've had many a fun time spots at the smoking area and just talking about a whole load of stuff. So I definitely wanted to kind of share your story or you with the public, and in more of a selfish way, I wanted to find out a bit more about you as a person and kind of your history and fill in some of the gaps in those many conversations that we have had over the years. All right, so
man. Good.
That's the starting point. How I do usually start, or always start really, is upbringing. So, just talk to me about you. Who was Dan as a little kid? How was you raised? Was you raised both parents, one parent? How did it go for you?
Yeah, so I had like a 2-parent household, my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
I'm the eldest.
Okay.
Then my brother came along sort of about 18 months-ish after I was born.
Yeah.
And then like 5-6 years later, my sister came along.
Right.
And then that was it. My parents sort of stopped at 3. They wanted a girl, and
they got
a girl, and that was it. Enough baby making at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah.
Thank fuck. Because I was like, 2 siblings is enough. 3 would have been too many.
Wow. Yeah. So what was the So you're the oldest.
Yeah, I'm the oldest. Yeah.
So from what I know of, because most of my closest friends are older siblings, and were you the kid that was held to a higher standard? Did your parents soften as the more children came? Did you get the question I'm asking?
Yeah. So I think in a way, yes. Like the biggest sort of example I've got of that is like my GCSEs, man. Like, I don't want to brag, but I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit. Like, I'm quite intelligent and did all right at school.
Yeah.
Did I revise? No. Like, fucking not one bit. Those study weeks before GCSEs, DOS, mate. Did nothing.
Yeah.
And I came out of doing my exams and shit, coursework and A-levels, GCSEs, etc. With like B's, C's. I got a couple of D's, but they were in subjects I didn't really give a fuck about anyway.
Yeah.
And my parents, while proud of the fact that I did well, came out with the classic line, "Oh, imagine how well you could have done if you put some effort in." I was like, So, and then like my brother and my sister, who love them to bits, obviously, but they're probably not as academic as I am, and didn't achieve as much as I did in terms of like GCSE results. But they got more, I wouldn't necessarily say more praise, but there wasn't that caveat to their results. That, imagine if you'd like tried harder. My sister, bless her, was probably the worst I think out of all of us, but she put in a load of effort, and that was probably the best she was going to achieve, like with or without effort, which is fine. Everyone's different, but you sort of think like, why am I the one that's having the well done but, and the other two are like, well done, no but, and I'm like, okay, cool.
So is that something that kind of was a common theme with you growing up, feeling like you were held to a different standard than your other siblings?
Yeah, I mean, I had like some aspiration of wanting to be a lawyer. Probably could be a lawyer. I can argue pretty well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then it didn't appeal to me. I didn't go to university, which I think my parents were probably a bit disappointed about. But it just, you spend hours scrolling through that ACAS list of like university courses, and I was just like, there is nothing here that I actively want to spend 3 or 4 years of my life doing.
Right.
And do you know what? To some degree, sort of now, I regret a little bit not going to university, but probably more for. I was going to say just the social aspect, but probably not. Like the social aspect would have been good. It would have been a bit of taking me out of my like bubble, in a different place, different groups of people, etc. But now, sort of at 33, you think, oh, I wish I had like a degree or a decent qualification under my belt, which would open up sort of different career opportunities. But I thought about like Open University, didn't end up doing that. I was like, didn't have a job at the time, and I just couldn't afford to like buy a laptop and stuff that was needed. So at some point, it would be nice once I've got sort of settled with my job. I've only sort of been there on and off, and I'm sure we'll come to that, since October. So yeah, I mean, another year or so, it might be something that I can then sort of dedicate some free time to and do like an Open University degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, go back to kind of family situation.
Okay.
What is your? How would you describe your parents?
I'd say it's changed over the years. Like, my parents now are quite affluent. Probably isn't the right word. My dad's got his own business. They've done well. They bought a new house a couple of years ago. They've got a good sort of social circle, etc. They weren't always that way. We grew up at some points like very like poor. To the point where, and I don't know if my mum would be happy about me saying this, but she's not here. But to the point where my mum would reuse a tea bag 2 or 3 times, or live off a couple of slices of toast and a scraping of butter a day to make sure that me, my brother, and my sister had food on the table. They've done definitely, I wouldn't say both ends of the spectrum. The other end being rolling in money and more money than sense probably, but they've worked hard to get to a point where they are now. I don't begrudge anything that they've achieved. I think that they've done really well, and so I think with that there's less pressure as such, especially now that we're older and we've all moved out and things. Like my relationship with my parents now is way better than it was 10 years ago, 12, 13, 14 years ago.
What about personality wise? What sort of personality is your...
Like my mum's always been like quite outgoing. My dad for a long time wasn't. My mum would go out with her girlfriends and like have nights out and shit, and my dad just didn't. But now, like my dad, for instance, will, like if my mum goes on holiday or whatever else, like with a couple of her mates, my dad will go down to the pub and like chat to some friends and stuff that he's got down there, or like go out for meals with people. Like again, really sort of different to how I remember him growing up.
Okay. So you remember him being more just in the house?
Yeah, when he wasn't at work, like he was definitely at home, and didn't really, we'd go and see like family, but do I ever really remember a point where my dad would be like, say to my mum or us, I'm going out with so and so like on Saturday night or whatever. Like my dad would go out with my mum and they would interact socially with people then. But I think my dad in the last few years has really sort of come out of his shell, I think. But it's definitely a change. They've always been good parents, I suppose. Like, you know, in
So
terms.
good. That's a very ambiguous word. Do you feel like you were disciplined as a kid? Was it a disciplined house? Was it like a free spirit house? Were you allowed to kind of do whatever you wanted? Or
it was definitely discipline. Like, I remember times getting my arse slapped. I remember being, I can't remember how old I was, but I swore once, and that was a bar of soap in the mouth job.
okay.
So yeah, it was very much, I wouldn't say strict. I wouldn't say that I felt like I was under any, you know, sort of like military style strict parenthood, but they definitely had rules. And if you broke them or you was a little shit, you knew about it.
There was consequences.
Yeah, there was definitely consequences. You know, and even to the point, like, as we got older, like, my mum would always cook dinner. But as we got older and like we would go out socialising and stuff and seeing friends, it would be a case of, if you don't tell us that you're coming home for dinner, I'm not cooking you dinner. So there was never any, you couldn't rock up after being out all night and then think, oh, I've got dinner on the table. If I've not told mum I'm coming home for dinner at some point, she ain't cooked no dinner. Like, so, yeah, you know, and even now I suppose they've got some rules as such, like, don't be an arsehole. But yeah, like, I think that's probably true for most people in all walks of life. Don't be an arsehole, I feel, is a good mantra to live your life by.
Fair.
Yeah.
So would you class yourself as being, if you was to characterise yourself, would you say you was a good son?
Yes and no. I definitely had, I sort of left school at 18, and probably for about 2 or 3 years I was like, fuck the system, don't want to get a job. Like, my argument was, I've literally just finished 13 years of schooling, I want to chill out for the summer. And my parents were like, you are getting a job. To the point where I would get,
You wanted to chill out for the summer?
I wanted to chill out for the summer. I wanted, like,
but it turned into 3 years.
Well, no, it didn't, because it didn't last that long. My parents didn't give me that chance. You know, to the point where it was, I'd be woken up in the morning with a glass of cold water over the face, get your ass out of bed, get dressed, go into town, take some CVs. Like, I'd have my key taken off me so I couldn't come back indoors until my mum got home at like 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, and then I like met somebody and I ended up working for her old man for a while. But yeah, like, and then I've like worked for my dad as well, and that, living with my dad, working for my dad, was not a good combination.
That's right.
Like, and it's funny because was having a similar conversation with my parents the other day about my brother. When you work with family and you live with family at the same time, that leaving your personal relationship at the door when you get to work doesn't fucking happen.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. So, you know, the way I would talk to my dad, the way my dad would talk to me, in any other employment situation just would not happen.
Yeah.
Because we've got a beyond professional relationship with each other, because we work, you know, because father and son.
Yeah.
So stuff that he would say to me or I would say, or the arguments or retaliation or whatever else, would never have happened with anybody else that works for my dad. So yeah, and it probably wasn't until I moved out at 21 to my humble abode that my relationship then started to improve with my parents. Like, it was very, it was shit.
So you say it was so you say it was shit.
Yeah.
Like, so, and what was the reason for it being shit? Was it that you decided to think that, you know, you finished school and now because I've been at school for so long, I don't have to work, I don't have to do nothing, I get to sit on my ass and eat your food? Do you think that was the catalyst, or was it straining before that?
No, it seemed to be alright when I was at school, but then I got, like I said, you know, it was a bit of, you know, not that I didn't want to work. I've never
sounded like you did.
I've never been. Alright. I've never been against the idea of working. But you kind of think, this is like my last opportunity before you enter 40 plus years of working, to think, fuck it, man, I'm gonna have a summer. I'm gonna like go and see my mates, like drink, smoke weed, like listen to music, like hang out, like sit in the sun, like chill in my mate's back garden, like whatever. Like I didn't want to at that point get up and, you know, after getting up for school 5 days a week for however many months of the year that you're at school, for however many 13 years of doing it, I was like, oh, I quite like a bit of a break, you know. But yeah, so, and then after that, again, like I said, like I worked for like my then girlfriend's dad for a while. Then I left there to go and work for my dad when he opened up his business. And again, like I said, like with my relationship then with my dad, and that would then boil over to being at home. And my mum was very much sort of stuck in the middle of, I don't want to piss my husband off, I also don't want to piss my son off. Like, you know, trying to remain neutral, and then my dad's coming home and being, oh, fucking Dan this, and I walk in and I'm like, oh, fucking Dad that. Like, you know, it just didn't do anybody any favours, and having that break of them moving out and a bit of independence and possibly being on more of an equal footing with my parents, because at that point I'm, you know, I was, while I paid them housekeeping and all the rest of it, a roof over my head I was dependent on them for. Food, like my mum cooking and stuff, well, I cooked occasionally, but like my mum cooking, again, it's like dependent on that. Washing, my mum did all that washing. The rule was that you bring it down, I'll wash it, I'll iron it. Well, she didn't, she was like, I'm not doing your ironing, like, I'll wash your clothes, but I'm not ironing them. I don't fucking iron anything now, so it didn't bother me. But yeah, like, you know, I'll leave the clothes on the stairs, you've got to take them up, like I'm not putting them away for you. So yeah, sort of breaking away from that almost dependency of things and having to sort of stand on my own 2 feet and do my own shit. Then, you know, I felt like I probably, and my parents would be like sitting there lapping this up, but definitely gained more like respect for them, and I think they probably gained a bit more respect for me, knowing that I'd sort of taken a step out into the big wide world. And
that's exactly what, the next question I was going to ask you is, do you think that you, as you said, stepping out onto your own and kind of seeing how, I don't want to use the word difficult, but I'm going to use it anyway.
Use it.
But how difficult running a house is with just you in it.
Yeah, I mean, I was...
in comparison to running a house with having to care for a partner and 3 growing children as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was quite fortunate that when I moved out, I moved in with the girl that I was seeing at the time, so we sort of moved in together. But still, you know, suddenly all these things that you don't think about, like paying your gas and electricity bill, sorting out your council tax, oh shit, I need a TV licence, like, you know, the financial aspect of living, like, you know, being independent and living on your own. Shit like, oh crap, I haven't got any clean clothes. Well, why haven't I got clean? Because I haven't done my washing. Like, it's not like I can be like, oh mum, have you washed that? So actually, I haven't got, if I don't wash it, then I'm going to get clean. Doing washing up, which I still to this day fucking hate.
That's the way.
Oh mate, honestly, like, don't look at my kitchen. I've got some washing up I need to do. But yeah, like, at that point, it is definitely a case of getting more of a grasp of what my parents had to do to some degree. Obviously, you know, they did it with 3 kids. And I haven't got any kids. Touch wood. But yeah, like, it definitely was, it was an eye-opening experience, and then being able to have like more adult conversations with my parents, like, you know, I remember speaking to him about, was it council tax? It was something that, you know, a conversation I never would have had based on the fact that I was still living at home. So yeah, it then becomes more of a adult relationship as opposed to a parent-child,
Yeah.
even though I was like 21 when I moved out,
Yeah.
when you're still sat there and you're still living under their roof, you are still almost, while I am still their child now, it's almost like, you know, you might still be going to work, but you're coming home to mum and dad, and like, you know, as I said, like certain things are done for you. So it was definitely a case of being on more of like an adult sort of level with my parents, which I think did all of us a world of good. You know, my relationship with my parents now, while we've had some rocky patches over the last 12 years, is way, way better than it was probably for the 4 years before I moved out. So, yeah.
Okay. So you are partially sighted.
Yes.
So
yeah.
what is, like, what level? Like, I don't. All right. Before I get, you can kind of get into like explaining the level of sight you have.
Yeah.
That's in this. But the question I really want to ask is, how did that affect you growing up? Because now, as I see you, obviously you're not a robot, so it obviously must still affect you in general life as an adult. But I'm assuming that it's better now than it was when you're younger. I don't know if that's how it works. So that's my assumption, and you tell me whether I'm right or wrong.
So with regard to your assumption, I would say yes and no.
Okay.
So, like, probably the best way to do this is to explain what the situation is first, and then I can go from there. So, I've got a genetic, hereditary condition called X-linked congenital stationary night blindness and nystagmus. Bit of a mouthful, I know, but it basically means that it's passed on by the women. So my mum gave it to me. My mum had no symptoms, like she doesn't suffer from it. It's a 50-50 shot of whether you're going to get it or not as a male. So I have it, my brother doesn't. I can't pass it on. It stops at me. Now, my sister is potentially a carrier. She's recently had, like, December, she had, like, a little girl. Again, so she may also be a carrier. If my sister has another child and it's a boy, and she is a carrier, there's a 50-50 chance that that child will have the same condition that I've got. So, yeah, and it basically just means that, like, my optic nerve, the bit from your eyeball to your brain, didn't... The term that I've always been told is didn't form properly. Now, whether that means there's bits missing out of it or who knows? I've never seen it. I don't know. You know, it's connected to my brain. It's never going to be one of those things I just pop an eye out and have a gander. But yeah, so that's basically it. So yeah, like as a kid, like from day dot, from the day I was born to me sitting here talking to you now, it has been a constant. Like there's never been a point where it's ever improved. I don't notice that my eyesight necessarily has got any worse. But you know, as you get older, eyesight and stuff starts to deteriorate anyway. I can still suffer from the same things that anybody else who gets older, you know, like end up developing like short-sightedness or, you know, as you get older, like macular degeneration and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, like that has been pretty much from day dot. And obviously as a baby, no drama. You know, my parents sort of noticed that my eyes moved a lot, and you can probably tell that my eyes move. Like, I don't know they're moving. It doesn't look like, for me, it doesn't look like they're moving, but yeah, they do move about. And they ended up sort of managing to get me seen by Moorfields Eye Hospital, and they then diagnosed. But yeah, so then obviously then growing up, like, at school, having to sort of like sit at the front of the class to sort of see what's going on, you know, and just sort of, again, like sport and stuff. Sport is very visual. So I've never really been, while I'll sit and watch football, am I going to go and join a team and start doing a 5-a-side or an 11? No, I mean, other than being a fat git, because it's quite a visual thing. it's difficult to sort of read the situation and see what's going on. So
before you move on, let me ask you a question.
Go on.
About like this kind of and obviously I don't know. I've never sat in your body to know what you can see and how the level of sight you've got.
Yeah.
But do you think there was an opportunity missed to, did you try football, for example, or did you try to play sports and struggle, or was it just you saying,
oh no,
I'm not built for that?
Definitely gave it a go, you know, like, especially when you're in like junior school, like, you know, PE and like rounders and all that sort of thing. And it's like swinging a bat at a moving ball. Well, sometimes I might hit the ball. My hand-eye coordination is never going to be at the same level as yours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like, I gave it a go, and you know, sort of like, don't get me wrong, if my mates were like, Dan, do you want to come and kick a ball around in a field? Yeah, sure, I'll come and do that. There's no like level of competitiveness to that. It's not a serious like sport. You're not like, it's not a case of winning or losing, for instance. You know, and my mates are quite understanding and they know, and you know, like, it's fine. But in terms of doing it as like a serious hobby or whatever, it's just not like practical. Yeah, so, and probably to give you an idea of like what I can see, if I'm in a car, like a passenger in a car, like I cannot drive, like I'm just plain not allowed. For me to read a license plate of the car in front, we'd almost have to be bumper to bumper.
Right.
So when you go and do your driving test and they say to you, what's that license plate say over there? I'll be like, no idea, mate.
But you can actually see that there's a license.
Well,
you can see the license plate.
I can see that there's a yellow or a white license plate, and I can probably make out that there's some like black characters on it.
Yeah.
But could I tell you what that said?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. No chance. Like, even when like going into something like McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, and you've got the menu up above the counter, so I can tell you there's right in there, stood at the till. Yeah. Could I tell you what that said? Yeah. Not at all. No chance. So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of like where I'm at with what I can and can't see. Yeah. And people say, is it blurry? And it's like, I wouldn't even say blurry. The only way I can describe it is not clear. Like, I know it's there. It doesn't look like a blurred mess. It's just not, the clarity isn't there.
It's not precise.
Yeah, it's not precise enough for me to be able to, you know, I'm sat here looking across the room and there's a window and I can see outside and there's a tree, and can I see there's individual leaves on that tree? No. But can I give you some description of the way those leaves and branches are? And yeah, but I couldn't tell you about an individual leaf. Right. So yeah, like that, growing up, early days of school was never really an issue. Like, the school I went to didn't do anything special. It wasn't until that I then started looking at secondary schools, and it then became a factor. And I was quite lucky that in Stevenage there's a couple of schools, or there was at the time, that catered for like visual impairment or like other sort of like impairments, you know, like hearing loss or whatever else. And so I ended up going to a school that had like a full-time team that offered like support, but I then had to go through a thing of getting like a statement, basically just it's from, like, and it then says you're then entitled to have additional support because obviously it's funding and all the rest of it. Right. And because my junior school had never done it, my mum and my dad, rightly so, were like, what the fuck? Like, you never told us that Dan could have had this extra help or, you know, whatever else. And we're finding out months before he's due to finish school. Yeah. How have you allowed 6 years to go by and not tell us that that's even an option? So at that point, then suddenly my junior school wants to put out all the stops and do stuff. And at that point, I was like, too little, too late. Like, what you're doing now isn't really, you know, and then I almost felt like suddenly singled out, and they were like doing different things or giving me like paper with like thicker black lines on to write, and I'm like, I've done 5, almost 6 years of school without that. Now people are looking at me going, why is he getting all this stuff? Like, whereas when I went into secondary school, because I didn't have that being in the normal group of people, and I use the term very loosely, it was like off the bat, like people knew this is the deal, this is like what Dan gets, like, you know, like I got given a laptop to do work on, because then that way I can read back what I wrote, and like, my handwriting's atrocious even now, my handwriting's terrible. I wrote something out of work earlier and I was like, slowly does it. But yeah, you know, like when I did exams, I got 25% extra time because it takes me longer to read and to write, etc. So, you know, that was great. But then that also opened you up to being bullied. So I definitely got bullied in secondary school that I didn't experience really in junior school, because you stand out more as somebody that's got something wrong with them, and you might have somebody sat in class with you like telling you what's on the board so you can make notes or whatever else. Like I would have almost like a one-to-one.
Yeah.
Not in every class, but quite a few.
Yeah.
You know, that then sort of singles you out for abuse almost, because pick on the different kid. Like, after I was going to find a weakness in somebody to pick on, and if yours is glaringly obvious, then, you know, easy target.